public infrastructure
Mm.
is the single most important thing, which is why I'm mad that we spent $10 million in India and Africa on polio vaccines when we should have been spending that money on clean water, on building bridges, on building suitable roads, on education. Because no matter what book I've read, whether they're liberals, whether they're conservatives, whether they're socialists, whatever, they all agree on the same thing.
Today, we have another special guest from Charlotte, North Carolina, my hometown, but we met at Chapel Hill. He enjoys sports and is going to be a future healthcare professional. But without further ado, I want to welcome Manny Okwudi to the friend zone.
uh,
Hey, did I get the last name right?
Okudi, yeah, dude. W silent. You got it. You just really put that oomph on it. That Okudi.
Yeah, yeah. The Igbo intonation, you know what I'm saying?
I love it. Only you could do it.
But what's going on, man? How you doing?
Man, I'm living, dude. It's been, you know how it's been. It's been a rough last year, just trying to, coming out of the pandemic, and then also us trying to like handle our like healthcare aspirations and what we're trying to accomplish, what we're trying to do. So it's been a ride, both good and bad, but we're coming out. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I'm not gonna speak too much on your background, but just to give people a little bit of context, Manny's a fellow African of Nigerian descent, and he's also pursuing the traditional African career of becoming a doctor. So there you go. Yeah, we both didn't stray too far away from our parents' dreams for us, but we definitely are trying to, pave our own path, I would say.
oh, 100%. Like, I mean, like you just said, like it was our parents' dreams at first, and then we kind of drifted away from it. Well, I don't know about you, but I did. I did a bunch of other stuff, but I really see more and more the importance of healthcare, more so than just like a financial medium, but more so as like you know a way to really make an impact on your community. So it just seemed like a really viable choice, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the money's definitely there, but it's also like the impact, I think, is the greatest reason why you should go into medicine or become a doctor because hey, the time we're about to invest the money is you can't get that
Oh
back.
no, second that, man. Seriously.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But like I mentioned, you're from Charlotte, but you're from Mint
Yes.
Hill. Correct me if I'm
No,
wrong.
you're right.
Mint Hill. So yeah, that's a suburb of Charlotte. How was it growing up there? Your time at high school before you decided to come to Chapel Hill.
I lived in Matthews for a while. That's don't worry. That's literally Matthews and Mill are so close. There's a road that literally connects them called Matthews Mint Hill. So you can literally just drive 5 minutes across. And like, but growing up in Mint Hill was definitely interesting because at the time I moved here, it was just like a town. So it wasn't a city yet. So it was still small, still developing. And for the most part, I mean, it was very community oriented. It was very quiet, but it was very like everyone in Mint Hill knew where everything in Mint Hill was and what people in Mint Hill were doing and what neighborhood you lived in. Like you ask kids, they all live in like the same kind of neighborhoods, no more than 5 minutes away from each other. I went to Independence High School, like right, literally not too far from my house here. And Independence High School did this very interesting thing where the year before I went, like it used to be like it didn't have the best reputation, but they flipped the school lines the year right before I went. So like the zoning line. So all the kids that went to Butler High School, which is a bit more reputable, like like half of them started going to Independence, and then the other half of Independence kids were at Butler. So it was really interesting because the whole social dynamic of the school changed. It was a bit more academically competitive, and honestly, it was just like there was also an increase in the amount of like students who just weren't of color or anything, which was fine. It was just a very interesting flip because my older brother went to high school there, and it was completely different than when he went. So yeah, but it was overall it's a good community. It's a great area. And I enjoy it anyway. But
Yeah,
but going to Chapel Hill though was just a completely different ride, as you know. It just elevated everything to a different level. Like I had never been in that kind of environment. It was definitely a trip for sure.
yeah. No, you started off, playing soccer at Independence High School. and you continue that, to Chapel Hill. That's part of the way we connected. But I don't know if you recall how
Oh, I
we
remember.
initially
I
met.
remember. I remember well. I remember well because we were both in the okay, UNC Chapel Hill freshman year, chemistry 101, Dr.
Hmm.
Ziegler. Like so we had a chemistry course. And like at Carolina, like these pre-med courses are just one giant, like they're just one giant hodgepodge of people who don't know what they're doing. So like we were there, 100 something plus kids, and you just sat wherever trying to like talk to anyone. And was just fortunate enough to I actually think I sat next to you in one of those classes, and we just chopped it up, and that was kind of how we started talking initially. And then from there, moved on to like study sessions. We only really had like because I was such a talker, we only had like three. Because I was just a very distracting person. But no, we met Dr. Ziegler's in that just awful Chem 101 class.
Yeah, as you can see, Manny, his memory is very clear. He has pretty good memory, but he's also candid. He'll tell you how it is. Like he said, we had numerous study sessions, but you can count the amount of ones that we were actually steady during those sessions. So um, definitely had a lot of fun around him. Definitely went through the ups and downs at Chapel Hill. We first met, as Dr. Ziegler's class, one of those notorious weed out classes, Chem 101. We scraped through, and I mean, of course, now we're here. But besides that, man, you played soccer. How was it also in terms of like being on campus and surrounded by other athletes?
For me personally, like that was one thing I really did enjoy. Carolina had a really good like athletic community. A community like it's funny, like Chapel Hill has a bunch of D1 sports, and all of those people are like all of our sports, even those we think we're not very good at, like football, have just brilliant athletes. So Chapel Hill attracts not only like really intelligent people, but generally speaking, of course, not everyone there obviously it's like that, but they also attract a lot of athletic people. And so it was really nice. Like, okay, I'm not playing a D1 sport, I'm not playing club. You go out to E-House Fields before it got renovated and no one can really use it anymore, outside of like athletes, and you go to the one next to the Carmichael Arena, Booker Fields, I think is what it was called.
Hooker, yep,
People
yep.
are just always playing soccer. And that for me was very important, especially as well. We had like a good international community at Carolina. Like we had a lot of exchange students, so you could always find someone from Italy. I remember me and one of my friends used to play with these guys from Barcelona. They used to they were live and breeds like football. Obviously, they're from Barcelona during like the prime era of like Messi, Suarez, Neymar, and whatnot. So like they would always organize things. People from Australia, England, like so. Soccer at Carolina was just a big thing. We played a lot as well, especially like our sophomore and junior years. So it was just a great place. Not just even soccer, but basketball as well. So it was a very athletic community for sure.
No, yeah, no. The students very competitive. Got to play on some intramural teams with you. That was definitely fun.
Fun.
But
It was fun,
also
but we got
you
smacked, bro.
Hey, you weren't supposed to reveal that, man. That's a embarrassing part of my history. I've dealt with a few losses when playing sports in my life, so that wasn't anything new. But what definitely was new for both of us, I would say, was being surrounded by D1 athletes. And I know you got to meet a few on your nights out. How was that? Being on campus with players that were gonna go pro.
It's really funny because I grew up a Chapel Hill fan. Like I grew up a UNC fan. Like I didn't even know they were good at like academics. So I'll make that very clear. Like I was a kid, I just like basketball. I didn't know they were like an academic school until I was a senior in high school. And I was like, wait, what? Really? Like I'm gonna apply. So to go and be around these athletes that you see on TV regularly was like, don't get me. No, I want to make it very clear. No fangirling was going on here. But it was a little bit of astonishment. First off, like I remember I met guys like Joel Berry and Theo Pinson, like Ryan Switzer and all of these guys. And I mean, by no means were we necessarily friends, but outside of like, but they were. I mean, they were interesting people. They were great athletes, but outside of that, like I mean, they had their ups and downs, but um they were interesting to say the least. But they were definitely out. I say that, man. The type of kind of functions they were at were always like they would just attract people. Like it didn't even matter. They would just like stand there like in a corner, like and the people just be there. It was actually funny. Do you remember Obafemi by chance? Yeah,
Obafemi,
he was a part of like Oasis.
who was on the track team.
No, 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 no. He was like a little heavier set. He had like he was muscular, like someone he had like a house like way off. Like he was Nigerian. He had like a
Yes,
house like
yes,
way out.
Oba,
Yes, yes,
Oba,
yeah. I
yeah,
remember I was trying to
Anumashan.
go to a function, right? And I went to the wrong house. Like and his house was next to the house I was trying to get to. Didn't realize it. I like opened the door and it's just the entire basketball and football team in the house. And there's just like nothing but them and women. That's it. And I'm just like, I stumbled across the wrong place. But then he just showed up at the door, like, Manny, like, come in, like, and I don't know. It was definitely a fun vibe. But that's always how you kind of ran into them in these like little secluded spots and everything.
Yeah, nah. I mean, it's good to see Nigerian brothers showing you some Nigerian love. And you definitely found your way meeting, running into the different athletes while they weren't playing games. Um, but I'm intrigued. How you said that you ran into Theo Pinson, but how could you have ran into yourself when people were thinking you were Theo Pinson? You remember those
Oh,
stories that you used to tell
I
me?
remember, bro, because because it helped me out in some instances. But like, yeah, that was crazy. I never really saw it. I never really looked at myself and said, "Man, I look like Theo Pinson." But I mean, the more people said it, it's kind of like when people tell you, like, you say something enough, it starts becoming the truth. And like, I remember looking at it, and I was just like, okay, hmm. Then sometimes when people say that, especially women, I'd just be like, okay, I guess. Like, but I mean, I wish more so I had his athletic ability because I mean, if you've seen him, he's still in the NBA. He's still getting some minutes for the Dallas Mavericks, and that just speaks to every like that's the thing. Carolina people were out, Carolina athletes were out, but like we can't stray away from just how great they were athletically. I do want to give a shout out to our field hockey team, by the way, for absolutely dominating when it comes to that sport. I think we have like 3 national championships in the last like 4 years or something. Like, it was just great being around. Because that's the thing. It was great being around people, no matter what they were doing, whether that was athletics or academics. They were competing. You know, it kind of made you feel the need to up your own game.
No, yeah, I agree. And we went to UNC, otherwise known as the University of National Champions, because that's all it bred while we were there, and it still does. But yeah, man, wanted to continue talking a little bit about your love for basketball. Of course, you said you grew up a Tar Heel fan. You're still following some of our athletes in the pro leagues, but we've got to talk about the attention that some of these athletes get starting from high school to college, which we got to experience, and now into the pros, bro. What's your thought about what's going on with John Morant, especially? I want to start off with him, man.
Yeah, so I do love sports. I love sports. I love watching them, no matter what. And with John Morant, it's very interesting. I feel like this is the bigger trap in today's culture. Social media it's a double-edged sword. I always say it's like done nothing. It's done the most probably in history for connecting the human race together, but at the same time, society is based on that you need to have some way that society is structured that kind of filters out the noise. I'm not saying it needs to be some sort of mandate from a government or anything, but society has to have some sort of like traditionally speaking, you had like if you're talking about villages, you had people who led those villages like chiefs, or if you're thinking more on maybe even a religious aspect, you had structures like I know this is kind of getting a little off topic, but like when it came to like Moses, for example, um, like he when he got the stone tablet from Yod, and these individuals are coming up to him asking him about wanting this law and that law to deal with their own grievances and their own problems. He was kind of a conduit and was like, okay, I'm the one that's going to be communicating with God, so it kind of helped filter things out, move things forward. And you see that in school, you see that in every sort of like institution. With social media, the problem is we don't filter. I don't. I'm a free speech guy, so I'm not like mandating. Anyone get stopped or anything. But you see now because these ideas are being kind of amplified in such an immediacy, like people are letting it get to themselves. And in cases like John Morant, he is someone who is very much a product of this culture, and he wanted to be seen in a certain light. I remember last year when he said when he was arguing with someone online, he's like, "You're gonna feel these hollow tips." It's like you're a multi-million dollar athlete, and you're talking about shooting someone like, that you don't know on social media. Um, and I feel like he has this need, like many young athletes, to not just to embrace this culture and this idea of being tougher than they seem and that they are, and that this facade or this toughness that they put on is somehow going to benefit them socially. Because athletically, we've seen guys like Tim Duncan, like Chris Bosh, like these quiet guys, Hakeem Olajuwon, like you can go and do your game, you can go handle your game, you don't really need a yap. David Robinson, but in this new era, attention is everything, especially with social media. You get likes, you get hits, you have marketing, you have brand deals, you have everything. So, especially to the young kids that really do value that part of, I want to say, Black culture, where you're seen as tougher than you are, someone who's a boss, someone who's, in control of all these things. John Moran, he's just a bigger symptom of the problem of the influence of trying to be someone you're not.
Yeah, and I'm wondering now, like, do you think NIL is a big contributant to the issues with young athletes and social media?
Man, that's a good question. That's like just super hard because like I don't know how to put it, but with NIL, it's very 50-50. I mean, we all play NCAA, right? We're all playing NCAA 05, and we're playing like, yo, why is the running back HB number 12? What's his name? Like, you don't know. You just ran for 400 yards and 6 orange slices. And you're like, bro, like what? So I understand why they want to be paid, but at the same time, it's like the problem with NIL is the whole point is that hunger, that drive to get to the next level. Like you need to I don't it sounds weird to say, but you need to suffer a bit, you need to have those struggles and be like, okay, I need to get to that next level to achieve my goals and my dreams. And we've already seen that many athletes squander their cash, squander their money. Granted, many athletes are getting better in the last decade because of the literacy information that's prevalent. But a lot of them don't know how to manage their financials. They're overwhelmed with a lot of this money. But now we've decided it's a great idea to give kids between 18 and 21 deals, like hundreds of thousands of dollars on top of them competing in athletic sports, which, as you know from being at UNC, just being an athlete in a D1 school comes with a lot of dang perks. A lot of things ESPN and Fox won't talk about that we were privy to. And it's like, but like, you know, the NIL deals are just a double-edged sword because you're giving kids all this cash and all this money and all these brand deals. What is that doing to their ego? What is that doing to their sense of to their work ethic? What is that doing on a bigger point to their teammates, their competition, their competitive? Imagine you're at a job, you're contributing to the team almost as much. You're not like Caitlin Clark or anything. You're not carrying your team like just on your back. You're contributing, but for example, a good case for me is Livy Dunn. Do you know who that is?
No, I'm not familiar with
She's
her.
like an LSU gymnast. And she has an NIL deal with many brands. Like she makes over. I remember I saw this post from Complex or Front Office Sports. She makes over $3 million a year in just NIL deals alone. And I remember when I was having a conversation with her. I mean, I was not having a conversation with her. I would never talked to her in my life. So I want to correct that. My head went somewhere for a second. But when I was like looking at her NIL deals and everything, she's getting these deals because she's seen as generally attractive, and she's a good athlete. Like I've seen, she's good. But compared to other athletes on her team at LSU, LSU is known for having a very good gymnastics team compared to a place like Auburn or some of these other SEC gymnast schools. It starts begging the question: what does that do for her? Not in maybe necessarily her case. What's that going to do for teammates of people that are getting these big money deals, and they're thinking, wait, maybe I'm just as good. How do I make myself marketable? And it becomes a challenge of, especially in college, of maybe making your star shine brighter than others. and that's where we can have a problem. And so that's why I'm wary a bit of NIL deals, what they're doing to the sport. And you see it with college football. Texas A&M had the #1 recruiting class in the nation last year because they were paying a lot of athletes. They're giving out big money NIL deals. You saw Nick Saban talk about this. Of course, once not Kirby Smart, once Jimbo Fisher threatened to reveal what Nick Saban was doing before NIL deal, Nick Saban backed off, like, oh, my bad, bro. Like, it's not even that serious. But they were horrible. Texas A&M was absolutely horrible, even though they paid out the most in NIL money. Because there's only so much you can do with this money. But now kids are transferring because they can get more money here. And use the new quarterback for the Tennessee Volunteers. They call him I think like what is it, $1 million Nico. He's got an $8 million NIL deal, and he hasn't played a snap of college football yet. You have to ask yourself the question: is this a good idea? And I feel like NIL deals and putting your star above your team it might be. I think it's already starting to become a problem. You see the amount of transfers going on in college sports now that they got rid of the 1 year wait, and yeah, we'll see, man. But I'm very 50-50 on it.
Yeah. I know you say you're 50-50 on it. It doesn't seem like you want to cast a bad image on the NIL deals, but right now it seems like you're pointing out more cons than pros. I'm trying to see what's the pluses in here.
I mean,
If there is a 50-50 side, if there's a half glass full for the NIL deals, what is it?
So that's a great thing. I didn't even realize I was harping on the negatives so much. I guess I tend to do that. But like for me, like the positives. I mean, the positive is really one obvious thing. It really trumps everything else, and that's college kids are now going to earn value for the work they put in. These schools make billions of dollars off of college football and hundreds of millions of dollars off of college basketball, assuming it's D1 Power 5. And then all the other sports make money, some lose money. But with NIL deals now, these people can actually earn value for the work they're putting in from the school, not only directly from the school, but college towns are really important. Whether you're in Ann Arbor, you're in Charlottesville, or whether you're in Chapel Hill. And there's a lot of local businesses in that area. So what better way to advertise than using someone who's an athlete from that area? And you see it now with I remember our QB that just Sam Howell. You saw he had the deals with Bojangles and Taco Bell. I mean, he plays for the Redskins now, but with Bojangles and Taco Bell and like the rest, and other athletes are having
Redskins.
Oh, my bad. Commanders. That's what it's called. I'm still on that old vibe. I'm a Giants fan, so for me, in my head, it's always Redskins. But yeah, no, thank you for catching. I didn't even catch that. I was like Redskins.
I mean, I'm a Cowboys fan, so I always my first instinct is call them the Redskins too, but we're trying to keep it PC a little bit here.
No, thank you. No, I agree 100%. I don't need you canceled yet. Yeah, how I had all those deals, and you saw a lot of athletes come up with those deals, and so I do like the fact that people people should earn money for their work, and if you're earning money for someone else, are you not entitled to some money of your own? So, I mean, on just a fair basis, a very free market basis, I mean, I can't necessarily disagree with it. Plus, I thought it was ridiculous. College athletes are getting suspended and stripped for taking like $200. Reggie Bush still doesn't have a Heisman. Give him his Heisman.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. You can retroactively take away someone's Heisman if they haven't committed a crime. Like he wouldn't in any other industry. He wouldn't be charged legally for a crime for taking that money. So it's very interesting. But yeah, you mentioned the pluses of the NIL deal, of course, the financial incentive, but also the benefit to that college town, other businesses, boosting the economy of where that college is based, which is great. But let's go back to the social media impact of that, because prior to NIL deals, you still had kids that were even younger than us blowing up on social media, getting clout. And now with the NIL deals, it's like not only are they celebrities, but they're rich celebrities. Do you feel like that's the ultimate, like, hurdle for these young athletes to overcome when it comes to now having the money to boost their status, or do you think there's something else that's greater at hand?
So repeat that last part again. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
'Cause I'm still
yeah. So I'm
processing.
just wondering, yeah, I'm just thinking, is it the money? Like when we think about John Morant, for example, he's got money, of course. Now he's in the league, but for an athlete in college, they're still getting that social media attention. They still have that clout, but now they even have the money to back it up.
Mhm.
Do you feel like maybe that's where the scales kind of tip over and it's like there's no looking back now? Or do you feel like, nah, that's not the biggest issue here that we need to try to maybe correct?
Awesome. No, okay, I got your question now. So there was an interesting. I wish I could remember the exact source, but there was an interesting poll. I saw it like NBC, maybe it was an NBC Marist poll or something of that nature, where it was just put out like a week or two ago, where it showed like American values, and people that are watching this will be able to look this up honestly, even if I get the source kind of wrong. But they were showing like American values, like and their prevalence over time from like the 1970s to now, and every category, like family, uh, family, children, that type of thing, religion, patriotism, all of it was down. Everything was down from the 70s, like drastically. The only thing that was up was money, importance of money. And so I feel like that, what you just asked with the social media and be having these NIL dues encapsulates the thing. Nowadays, getting the bag, quote unquote, is like the most prominent thing. It's not these, don't get me wrong, plenty of people still hold altruistic values and still have maybe higher goals set, but you see influencers now. You look how look. You just post a funny video online. You could become a millionaire. You could become you all of a sudden you're at red carpets at the Grammys and you're at the Oscars or you're on your YouTube channel and you're getting thousands, millions of hits. You're doing commercials. I mean, look at Kabi Lame. Like he uh he just does this thing for like simple stuff, like when you do like he has the TikToks where he does like simple methods that people make difficult. He doesn't speak during any of the videos. And he's a multi-millionaire. He's the biggest TikTok. He was the biggest TikTok star, if not still the biggest TikTok star. And so when you combine social media with the money, it is very toxic and becomes a problem because the only thing you're going to want is more. There's nothing more intoxicating than money, fame, power, attention. And you get all of now with social media, you don't have to do a lot of that legwork. I remember a lot of it is just your brand, your image. And once you have that, people are willing to feed into you. They're willing to feed into your ego. They're willing to feed into your ideals. They're willing to really prop you up bigger than maybe you are. You get a yes man, yes woman. And so in the absence of the social media presence, maybe if they were just making the money and it was still like more forms of traditional media, maybe I mean it will definitely still get to their head, but maybe it's more difficult for them to navigate through. It's slightly more difficult for them to navigate through to get to that high point of like, oh, I'm obsessed with my image and myself and my value. But in today's age, yes, like when you have that media and that star presence and all of this money that's going to be at your fingertips and at your hands, I mean, how is it not going to build a society where a lot of people want to go and continue that? You ask a lot of kids now in grade school, and you ask them what do they want to be when they grow up. They say they want to be a a YouTuber, an esports star, an Instagram influencer, and you that's different from 20 years ago when you were like you ask a kid and they're just like, maybe I want to do engineering, or maybe I want to be a veterinarian, or something of that nature. So you know, it's definitely to me, it can be a problem if the right values aren't grounded there as well.
Yeah. And for me, I think of money as a tool. Some people like to say, money is the root of all evil, but ultimately it comes down to the person who's using the money. And just like social media, or just like money, social media is another tool. And I'm wondering, how can we instill those values that we can use that tool maybe more appropriately to 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 benefit our lives, especially considering these athletes, they got the money, got the clout, which is nice, but Are they influencing people in the proper way? Because at the end of the day, we consider them influencers.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't have the moral authority to really come down on them like that and understand whether what they're doing in the long term is going to be right or wrong. But what I will say is that it's funny when you say it's a tool, right? That's the perfect encapsulation of everything. Everything is a tool, and it's only as good as the person wielding that tool. You can give me a bazooka, but I am no good with a bazooka. Now, if you gave Sylvester Stallone a bazooka, like Rambo Prime Sylvester Stallone, it'd be much more useful in his hands. So like when it comes to social media, the problem is the tool and the people it's being used by. It's being used by these young athletes, these young influencers, all these individuals. But all these individuals were given guidance by who else other than their parents. So, when it comes down to how to utilize the tool and how we can deploy it best, that really starts before they even touch it. It's kind of like it's preventative. So, you have to really it's up to parents and people raising children, raising the next generation to give them some sort of value set that they can move on. So that way, when they are it's like your parents, they guide you, they give you all these lessons, they give you, and being African especially, they're telling you you got to stay on your education, do not go to that person's sleepover. Shout out to Sam, by the way, because Sam, when I was watching his podcast, he nailed the Nigerian parents kind of African parents aspect. So shout out to Sam. But they tell you this, and then eventually they're gonna let you go. That's every parent. Eventually they're gonna have to let you go, and it's, are you gonna take what I've instilled in you and utilize it properly? Um, and so that's when it comes to the tools of social media and the tools of understanding the money, understanding the fame, understanding how to move right. Um, then that is where you will be able to utilize social media properly. But if you are not instilling that core base, see, this is actually a conversation for maybe a different day, honestly, because that's a much wider narrative
Mm,
about um, fundamental cultural values as well as upbringing, etc., etc. But all I will say is that's what's going to matter. You have to start people before they use the tool. Like if you're training in swordsmanship, you're probably going to practice with a wooden sword first, or a wooden bamboo sword, or something like that. If you've ever seen anime, they always practice with wooden swords. But you also see things like aikido or something like that, and it's you're using wooden swords. Or you can look at fencing; they don't use real swords like that. But when you get something in your hands that's an actual tool, like maybe it's like, okay, like let's utilize this properly. But I've given you the training, so all it is raising people to actually know how to handle the tools, so when it's their time they can do their best with it. But I can't outlay some long-term moral judgment currently. I just can't do that.
for sure, for sure. And I know you're not purposely pleading the fifth, but it is a very, I guess, complicated topic, and it really does stem from how a person was raised, like you're saying. Thinking about Dele Alli, soccer player, he played for Spurs, most notably. His career went downhill, got caught up in social media, TikTok, all this stuff during the pandemic. And now he's like nowhere to be found in the soccer world. Do you think there's hope for John Moran, or do you think he's headed down the same trajectory?
Man, Dele Ali, no, John Morant has hope. He has a lot of hope. John Morant, first off, excuse me, for all intents and purposes, is an amazing basketball player. He's an amazing basketball player. His teammates love him as well. That's a big thing. His teammates absolutely love him. His coach likes him. His team, the people in his life do seem to be behind him. So that intrinsically tells me, okay, he's not a bad guy. He's someone that maybe. It's funny. I am older than him. I was about to say I am older. Like he's not a bad guy. He just kind of got a little lost in the perception he may have thought he needed or he wanted. But he's not a bad guy, and he's also, like I said, he's amazing. So it doesn't really matter. But with Dele Ali, it's much different. I don't know if there's a recovery for him. I really do not, because um, you know, for in football especially, it is very hard to regain form. Like it's very, very, very hard. I'm thinking of guys like Mesut Ozil, who's one of my favorite players like ever. I'm thinking of guys like Ronaldo El Fenomeno after the two knee injuries. I'm thinking of Ronaldinho after he left when he was at Barca, him and Deco. I'm thinking of guys like, it's funny how like three of them were Brazilians, but anyway, Like it's very hard when you fall off on form. And Dele Ali has never made the attempt. And it's different because in soccer, with the it's different from basketball and football because with soccer, or football, I don't know how you want to call it in this podcast, but you have these. You could if you're if I'm in the NBA and I suck, like there's no other NBA in America. Like there's G League and then it's overseas. But in soccer, it's like okay, you don't make first league of Premier League, you can go play first league in I don't know Spain, and it's still quality, or you can go play in first league of Ukraine or Russia or anywhere. And although it's not the same quality, you can still play Champions League, you can still do all of these things. Dele Ali moved on from Tottenham to Everton, and then from Everton he moved to I think it was Besiktas, and then and then he after Kim Kardashian he met Kim Kardashian I think the other day. Like no one saw this man again. Like Besiktas literally doesn't know where he is. So there's no hope for him because I won't say there's no hope, but there's very little. Plus he's already like 25, 26. He has even at Tottenham, he had somewhat of an injury history after his first two spectacular seasons. He started getting knocks regularly, which maybe at first I thought it was just 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 weird injuries, but it might have been due to his lack of proper training, lack of proper diet, because you can clearly see he's not as invested. If you saw the Tottenham documentary on, I think it was like Amazon, Jose Mourinho brings him into the office and he tells him, you know, I was 20, he said he was 21 the other day and now he's in his 50s. He's like, life goes by very quickly. Like he's warning Dele Ali, like if you do not utilize your talent now, it's going to come back to bite you because time is going to fly. That's why you want to do everything you can now to utilize the tools you've been given. And Ali's sitting there, he didn't say that in the exact wording, but Ali's sitting there nodding a bit, like, and he took none of it in. And now he's just been, Besiktas already said they're not renewing his contract. Where's he going to go? Where's he going to go? It's going to be like Mario Balotelli, one of the most brilliant players I've ever seen in my entire life. I was rooting for him every single second. I'm rooting for him right now. When he was at Nice in France and he was doing excellent, I was like, yes. I was so happy. But it comes down to that point where at some point they're not getting it back. Like they're not getting it back, and he's got very little chance. His next stop is his last stop for me. But social media played a big role in that. I remember I used to follow him and he was always taking pictures at parties with his girlfriend, with girls, with this and that. There's rarely anything football related. Like he was very into himself. So, and as a man who's also part Nigerian, I feel for him because but Dele Ali he's the worst example of the current culture, social media culture, living life in the fast lane. 2 spectacular seasons and it went to his head. So.
Mm. Yeah, so essentially the Kardashian curse strikes again, and that's why there's no hope.
There is no hope. Remember, they went to the Arsenal game. So Kim Kardashian went to the Arsenal game against, I think it was Real Betis. No, was it Betis? I don't remember. It was one of.
It was Porto. No, Sporting Lisbon.
Sporting Lisbon. Thank you. There we go. And they lost. And then she went to the PSG game against Stade Rennais and lost. They lost. PSG lost. So like, I'm telling you, when this woman's like stuff, man, you got to be careful. Or when any Kardashians around you, you got to be careful, bro. We all saw how Lamar Odom ended. I'm telling you, I don't want to end like that. For real. I mean, he's alive, but I don't want to be found in a brothel with crack.
True. And I'm not an Arsenal fan. If anything, I hate Arsenal. But I'm a big fan of Starboy Saka. And I saw he was on FaceTime with Kim K, and I was like, oh no, this might be the downfall of Starboy Saka.
Yes.
I mean, he didn't play today. He got injured over the international break. I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying this is an omen, but Starboy Saka needs to watch his back.
No, he needs to, bro. If you see a Kardashian, go the other way. Go the other way, bro.
Hey, it's like in the hood. It's like in the hood. If you hear a gunshot, run the other way.
Even if it's not a gunshot, if you just hear a loud bang, like I always love black people who do that. If someone hears like a bang, everyone just starts running, and like you don't ask questions, you just run. Like
Exactly. Yeah, but we were just talking about the money and how that influenced young athletes. We're gonna pivot a little bit, but still stay on the topic of money. but how it influences healthcare options here in the U.S. I know we've talked privately, especially during the pandemic, about our views about healthcare for all. But just wanted you to kind of break down a little bit about the economics behind it and why maybe what people think healthcare for all could be may not actually be what it would be if we implement it here in the U.S. I'm just want that economic backstory because you studied a little bit of econ
Yeah.
in Chapel Hill, so feel free to dumb it down for us that don't
I mean,
know as much econ as you
full
do.
disclosure, I've actually learned more probably just kind of reading. Like one thing I don't do anymore is read articles. I read books now to
Yeah.
like try and learn. So I think I've learned more from just
Hmm.
reading like actual texts like regarding this topic. And first and foremost, the United States healthcare system, like first of all, I am a fundamental free market guy. Like I'm, very, very much capitalistic free market guy. But the United States healthcare system is fundamentally broken because there is no free market. That's the biggest farce in the entirety of our entire healthcare system. There is no free market. And I'll get to that in a second, but first and foremost, free healthcare, right? So people always say they want healthcare for all, universal healthcare, free healthcare. I'm not opposed to that. I would also like that to some extent, especially having worked in emergency settings and with hospice and everything. Even though hospice is covered by Medicare, so it's not really that big of an issue, but so first and foremost, there's no such thing as free healthcare. So when people say that, they're mainly thinking of either Canada or Britain. So Canada and Britain have so Canada has a national insurance has national insurance. They also call it Medicare. Medicare is actually modeled off of that. And in Canada, the national insurance system just is based on provincial taxes. So that's how they supplement it. Provincial taxes. Provinces have their own means and ways to direct they negotiate with hospitals with heavy government, arbitration to figure out what prices are going to be. And that is a fundamental model of all the universal healthcare systems I've looked at, from Canada to Britain to France to Switzerland. Negotiation. There's constant price negotiation. Now, how they choose to do it is different. So you have Germany, which allows hospital groups and doctors in regions to negotiate their own prices. And then you have places like Japan, where Japan negotiates between the doctors and the hospitals. And so when people think of free healthcare, they either want the national insurance system where the government just pretty much pays all the bills for whatever doctors bill, or they want the NHS system in England where it's completely government run. Everything is government owned. You can have a private practice per se, but you're still billing the government. And there are certain things you can't do. So in Britain, like they make sure you can't offer certain amenities that they have not regulated you to, because they don't want like a private system to outcompete the public system there. But also a misnomer that people don't realize is like insurance is a heavy part of it. So like Germany and France and Switzerland all have private insurance. Like so they get away from either national health insurance or the UK model of complete total government run national healthcare service. The US, I mean not the US, Germany and France actually have private insurers, but they're nonprofit wellness funds. That's how they're made up. So in the United States, most of our healthcare insurance is for profit. Even Blue Cross and Blue Shield, you go to their website, they'll be like, we're nonprofit or not for profit. That's only half true. They back in the 80s were bought up by Anthem, which later became merged with another company to become Wellness. And so now they don't they pretty much half the Blue Cross and Blue Shields operate as profit, and then the other don't. It's really strange. But even so, 90 to 95% of Blue Cross and Blue Shields still have to operate like they're for profit, because the for profits would generally offer younger people better subsidies, essentially, better premiums, and that still goes on because younger people are generally healthier. It's like car insurance. You don't wreck your car a lot, you have lower premiums. Same with healthcare. And so they have wellness funds in places like Germany, France, and Japan. And these wellness funds, which are over in some cases in Germany, there's like over 200, are nonprofits that have to pay 70% of any bill. They have to, employers and people contribute I think it's like 5%, 6.5%. And, the copay is always low, and negotiation occurs as well. So when it comes to free healthcare, it's like there's no such thing as free. Everyone has a system of paying for it. And most of these countries actually go with having private insurance like we do. It's just they actually have structures and sets and laws for how to do that. And my problem is the farce that we have anything like that at all. Um, I'm sorry, if you want to interject with questions, go ahead, because I could go on for like an hour or so.
No, yeah, I think you're kind of painting the picture right now for what the economics behind healthcare is. Um, I was just thinking about the fact that you said nothing here is or nothing is technically free. When we think about universal healthcare for all, someone's paying for it. And I was thinking like here we taxes is a big issue when it comes to voting. I feel like universal healthcare for all would also squeeze the middle class a little bit more when we think about the tax structure behind it. Because if it's not coming from our paychecks, it's definitely going to have to come from taxes. And I don't know what your thought about that
So
is.
that's why, for me, I've moved away from the national health insurance Britain model. I already, in my mind, if I was ever creating a model, I would just, those can't be it for me. Just because if you look at the NHS and Canadian system now, there are over 70,000 Canadians that leave Canada to come down here and get medical treatment. In fact, I was listening to a senior fellow from like the McDougall Institute in Canada. It's a nonpartisan think tank in Canada. I was listening to one of the senior fellows, and he said, he lives in Ottawa. He said to see a dermatologist is going to take him like 2 years. And then he said to get an MRI up in, I think, Nova, what was it?
Nova
No, I
Scotia?
want to say Nova Scotia, but it was some other region of Canada. I can't remember exactly what it was. He said it takes like 6 months just to get an MRI. Like the time, like don't get me wrong, you need primary care in most of these countries. You'll get it pretty quickly in a couple days, like normally a day. But when it comes to more specialized things, they restrict those, and it's not as bad as people make it out to be with like death panels. It's just if you have like, let's say you have a bad knee, a bum knee, but you can live, but it really hurts. They will recommend just not even getting the surgery. Your options are very limited. And you see the Canadian system now, it's just very stressed. Same with the NHS. The NHS is very, very stressed because these are things that heavily rely on taxes. And if you don't have a strong, and as people, the baby boomer generation gets older, the tax base is getting smaller. You're not having as many people work to see. This is the thing with all welfare systems, all welfare, pension systems, everything. You just saw they're tearing Paris apart because of not necessarily because of Macron increasing the retirement age, but more so of how he did it. He asserts like the Congress or the parliamentary rules and just pushed it through himself. If he had done it properly, that it would have been a different story. But every single welfare system relies on a strong tax base, but it relies on a bigger tax base than the people you're paying for. If you look at Europe's demographics, they're modeled like like an Instagram model, like this, like like a Coke bottle or something. I don't know. Like so they have so much more people going into that retirement age of the early 60s, mid 60s than they have working people. And what does that mean? That means less taxes. That's the same for Social Security. That's the same for Medicare. That's the same for Medicaid, all of this. So when your tax base is starting to shrivel up, and you see in the West, we're having like a birth rate problem. Birth rates are on the decline everywhere. And you can't get young people to not only have children, but as well as a lot of people aren't finding jobs necessarily that they can consider careers. You're not going to be able to collect the taxes. In fact, interesting note, 47% of Americans don't pay any tax, like any income tax anyway. They pay no income tax because they don't qualify. Or they pay very, very like nothing. 51% of Americans do, and 70% of the tax is paid by people in the top 10%. So normally 100,000 or more. So the top bracket is already paying in the most taxes, and a lot of these guys are getting older. Most people earn most of their money after 40. So you're in a very weird situation where it would squeeze out the middle class, and it just not won't be sustainable unless either A, everyone starts just having babies, or B, you have mass immigration. But look at places like Japan, which are very strict on immigration. Japan is 98% Japanese. They're literally paying people to move to remote regions outside of Tokyo because they're having a population collapse in the next decade or so. Everyone's going to be old. They're going to need those young people working. Um, and Japan, that's a different topic for a different day. I was going to talk about why they keep it like that. But unless they start importing immigrants like mad, like that's normally what people do to fill out their like workers. They just get a bunch of immigrants. Um, then you won't have those systems to support your healthcare programs. And so that's where if you want universal healthcare, the way I think to do it is still the Germany or France way. A private insurance, government needs to set, okay, 70% insurance has to pay 70 to 80% of everything here. And then people, employer and employee pay maybe 3.5% of every paycheck. And then there has to be price negotiation between the hospitals and the insurers, and then the government can act as an arbitrator or mediator. Because what we have currently now is just a fractured system where we're trying every single system. We have the NHS for veterans and Native Americans. We have the Canadian healthcare system for Medicare recipients. We have out of pocket for everyone that's able and fit in the working class. I mean, and then we also have the private insurance model, obviously, for, generally speaking, but it's too much of a fractured system. And I want to say the people that you think are on your side are not on your side.
Yeah, bro, you just broke it down well. Summarized it right there at the end. We have multiple systems in one country, so it's hard to manage all that and produce an equitable system per se. And equity, equality, those things are hard to fight for, and a lot of people don't even understand the nuances of both terms. But it just shows that we need to find a more uniform system, and I think you just suggested one right there. Um, Now, even with the NHS system, you of course point out the cons with the payment structure of it. But even like when I think about us wanting to become future physicians, there's also the burden on physicians with the amount of patients they have to take in or the amount of hours that they're working. So it's like people don't, I think oftentimes people hear face value, the benefits to them, but don't think about the benefits of the effects to the whole system, because you're seeing a lot of physicians in NHS switching careers
Mm-hmm.
because of the burnout they're experiencing from the overload, long wait lists to see even primary care physicians, for example, or long wait lists to go for more specialized services. So it's something that people need to think about, I think, a little bit more, and you definitely brought a little bit more attention to those issues.
And that's a thing. No, exactly. You see, like, don't get me wrong. I still view all of those systems as better than ours, solely because no matter what, whether they're doing NHS or NIH or, I mean, that's National Health Insurance, NHI, or whether they're doing Germany, France, Japan's private insurance model with solid price negotiations. Because what I said at the end of my last statement, like the people you think you're on your side are not on your side. I want to make this very clear. The American Medical Association, the Hospital Corporation Association, it's really disheartening to me. They're not on your side. They do not lobby for stupid things to be removed. For example, certificate of need. So one of the biggest things, if you ask any medical student, you ask any medical faculty, and I did this during my med school interviews, like you ask them what's the biggest problem, they all say access, right? I remember down in Lincolnton, my mom was in Lincolnton doing some healthcare work, and I remember she was talking about how some people were talking about how they drive an hour just to get to a hospital. For me, I can drive because I'm in Mint Hill. I can get to any hospital within 20 minutes. I can get to 4 different hospitals, maybe 5 in 20 minutes. That's great. But and 2 I can get to in 10. So, so there's a certificate of need is something that every state has. Essentially, if you want to build a hospital, you have to present to a government board why you need that hospital. I'm going to repeat that. If you want to build a hospital, almost every state, you have to present to a government board why that hospital needs to exist. That government board is normally made up of representatives from hospital corporations who lobby your political, the politicians you elect. Most people do not know this. Most people will never know these people's names. So the people in charge of determining whether you, as an entrepreneur, as an aspiring physician, want to open a clinic or a hospital, You need, well, I don't know about clinics necessarily. It depends on the type of clinic. But with hospitals, all of them, you have to get special permission from the very people you will be quote unquote competing against. Nonsensical. Because without competition, what happens? You have monopolies. Without monopolies, you have what? Price gouging. Um, and so these hospitals are under no competition, no threat, and you can't just build more hospitals for people that need it. It's insane. Then you have to take into the fact that when the Affordable Care Act passed, and I want to make this very clear, the Affordable Care Act does have certain great benefits. You can stay on your parents' plan until 26, coverage of preventative services, a model that was able to find a way to find some way of getting people insurance that didn't have it at a better affordable price. But it left so many holes to the point where I was ready just to redo it because the biggest thing is there's no price negotiation. So the government, so these plans and these insurers can just keep charging outrageous amounts for drug prices and treatment prices. And there's absolutely no negotiation that happens on the part of governments that the government that negotiates for the exchange to be put on, like that negotiates for these insurances to be put on these exchanges. And hospitals, the people that are supposed to be looking out for you, the physicians, AMC, I mean, the not AMC, the American Medical Association does absolutely nothing because they want to keep high specialist pay. They want to keep high physician pay. Medicare is out of whack and we're paying it for our taxes because outside there's a fee for service. Don't worry, there's a fee schedule for certain physician things that you do. But if you're like a specialist, like a radiologist or an anesthesiologist or any of that, it's fee for service, which can just drive up costs. And so, within even with the drug negotiations that came off of Biden's recent American plan, like in 2021, like the government just negotiates for any drug that does not require a hospital's authorization and that's been at least on the market as a brand with a patent for 7 years. That doesn't help. It needs to be everything coming through the pipeline. Otherwise, you get them time. Like, what was it? Over 80% of the drugs on the market, as this was reviewed by the Journal of the American Medical Association, New England Journal of Medicine, and all these different medical journals, over 80% of the drugs on the market, like, do not benefit anyone at all. They offer no benefit than cheaper alternatives. And I want to make that very clear because this is something I want to segue into. I have really lost a lot of faith in peer-reviewed research just after understanding what peer-reviewed research is. Everyone always says it's peer-reviewed, it's peer-reviewed, it's peer-reviewed. But I remember I was reading a book, The Sickening, I forget the rest of it, The Overburdening of America's Health System by John Abramson. He's a family medical physician for 20 years. He is a current Harvard professor. And he's been a part of the system. He's litigated against drug companies for the US government multiple times, acted as an expert witness, and he's worked in litigation. The problem is when most researchers only see peer reviewers only see the final peer review sheet that gets handed to them. They don't see the electronic data records of patients. They don't see the clinical case studies of patients. They don't see any of it. Not to mention, only I think 32% of physicians see, like if it's a multi-hospital study, only 32% of researchers get to see the other hospital study. It all gets collaborated together by the drug companies. Drug companies sponsor like 80% of research. They mainly contracted out to CROs, which are these research organizations. In academia, like they get less of the funding, but like a huge part of academia is is industry funded research. And industry funded research is already shown to be 50% more favorable to their drug than if you just had like a non-industry funded research of the same thing. Like, so when people say peer reviewed, I don't think they even know what that means. Like the peer reviewers most of the time are also friends with those organizations and get financial kickbacks. The last 9 FDA commissioners have gone on after they finish working for the pharmaceutical company. Like it's all like a sham. Like they don't work. So the AMA doesn't work to negotiate. Like you're a physician. I want to make money. You want to be a physician. You want to make money. But at the same time, I'm willing to reduce my salary for people to get affordable healthcare. I want to open up private clinics. I want to open up private hospitals. I want to be able to negotiate drug prices. If you go to Canada, you go to Britain, you go to Japan, the drugs that you find here, like for like a year-long course of Humira in this country is like 72,000 for a year-long course of Humira. You know, the it's for like it's like an immunosuppressant. If you have like rheumatoid arthritis or colitis or anything like that. If you're in Australia, it costs like 1,000 for that same year course. Like, you know, you have insulin analogs that they put on the market that are no better than animal or human insulin, it costs what 100, 200, 300% more. Like, something metformin is more useful than any of these other insulin analog ones. But even the American Association of Diabetes admitted as much in 2019 slightly. They're like, yeah, maybe think about human insulin. But these drug companies are pushing papers on doctors when they go to their clinics. Like, here's a research study. Like research journals. Most of their money comes from drug companies buying prints of the research they funded to then give to doctors. And doctors are well-meaning. Like, they've been told evidence-based medicine is the best thing ever. But so I don't blame them. And they don't have time to sit there and comb through everything. But the whole system is just out of whack in terms of what you're legally allowed to do, how we get insurance to pay for people's healthcare. And we can do it, we can change it, but no one has the political will because the biggest actors, from your hospital associations to your doctors to your insurers, just simply don't want to do it. And you're going to keep getting gaslit each day. So yeah, I ranted a bit there about that.
Nah, yeah. I mean, you got onto your soapbox a little bit, but I think it was helpful because essentially you brought us to a point where we can see that if you follow the money, you can see where the true implications or the true roots of all these issues are. And it's like seeing the funding coming from these pharmaceutical companies and how that influences the expenses accrued with medicine, and how that also, influences doctors or medical professionals' decisions when treating their patients. That shows that, money is a big reason why um, we're in the state that we are today. Now, there's another aspect of healthcare. I know we've been talking mainly about the economic side, but there's also the cultural aspect of healthcare. So we got obesity that is rampant here in the U.S. I think the U.S. has the most obese people in the world. Of course, we're one of the largest countries in the world, so that makes sense. And considering things like fast food, lack of exercise, and poor diets, I mean, it all contributes to to this factor. What do you think how the culture of the U.S. needs to change or can change in the future?
No, that's one of my biggest issues. That's something I was actually remiss I didn't just mention, but I'm glad you asked me about it because I'm gonna try to like not spend as long on it. But in a nutshell, Ansel Benjamin Keys, 1961, came out with the heart diet heart hypothesis. So basically, by just correlating 7 countries of wealth, he noticed that the more saturated fat intake you have, the more cardiovascular disease you have. And that became the basis for everything we do today. Even though if you took all 27 countries, which a French researcher did during that same time period, and you plot the amount of saturated fat to heart disease, there's no correlation. There's no correlation whatsoever. Also, Benjamin Keys handpicked his data. And then he made multiple other kinds of research where he didn't do a good job. I don't want to get into it because I don't have time necessarily, but I really want people to look into this. If people can, read The Big Fat Surprise by Nina Techwolf. Also read the work of Gary Taubes if you get the chance. These are 2 people that have really looked into it. Basically, in a nutshell, I want people to do their own research. I don't have time. Saturated fat was one of the biggest and most important things in our diet. So meat, dairy, eggs. And we completely, off the research of really one person, and then people subsequently trying to use that research and building upon it, torpedoed our diet. We introduced a high carb diet. There is research galore on the high carb diet that shows carbs are a much greater risk for heart attack, greater risk for obesity, greater risk for everything. Not to mention the inclusion, and even though this is the jury's still out on this, vegetable oils and polyunsaturated fats. So let me just do this quick scientific thing, right? When you eat a low sugar diet, let's say a high fat diet, right? What happens? So let me start with the high sugar. When you eat a high sugar diet, what happens? You have insulin. Insulin gets released, right? When you are using insulin, insulin is going to take the sugar and put it into like your cells, so that way your cells can use it for energy. If you don't eat a high sugar diet, and this is very key, what happens is your body then uses fatty acids for energy catabolism. These things are normally called ketone bodies. There's some worry about ketoacidosis from the lowering your pH levels, but overall, it's kind of negligible. But your body basically utilizes fat when you're when there's a lack of sugar. So that's why normally you can check this out with some of the research. I'll send you some later, but like you can actually lose weight eating a lot of not polyunsaturated but saturated fats. I'm not saying it's 100%. I'm not giving out health advice. But I'm saying there are there's research that's shown that this is possible. In fact, Pete Ahrens, one of the most respected health researchers of the 1950s, someone who could not be silenced, he did a really cool thing with gas chromatography where he would feed rats and human. He would feed rats, but also take human blood, right? That was like maybe high carb and high fat. What he would do is when he was in class, he would show the blood to his students. And when he would show the blood with his students, one would be very chalky white, and the other one would just be clear. And he would ask them, which one is the high fat diet? And all the students would pick the one that's chalky white. And he was teaching in med school. And he's like, no, it's actually the clear one. And also, as you know now, which is evident, cholesterol is a very bad indicator actually of heart disease risk. That's not a secret anymore. Most, physicians would admit that because you have two different types of cholesterol. But essentially, Americans have strayed away from a natural diet. We have too many processed foods, too many fake fats like soy lectin, moderated soybean oil, all of these things. Other countries also we have like titanium dioxide, artificial food colorings. Other countries put a lot more focus on eating healthy foods like natural foods. It's not even healthy. If you go to France, all they do is smoke, drink, and eat fat. Like they just smoke, drink, and eat fat. But they're much healthier. And in Europe, people do that all the time because their food is natural and they're not consuming all these fake artificial fillers and gums that are in United States food. They put warning labels on food too, like this contains titanium dioxide. This contains red this and that. This is a cancer risk. In the United States, that's not allowed. Can't do that. Can't do it. Food companies lobby can't do that. We are being poisoned on purpose. In fact, the European Union dismissed their dietary limit on fat intake. What is the only country that still has a dietary limit that recommended one by our FDA or USDA? The United States. We're the only country that has a recommended daily limit of like fat. I think maybe two other countries do, but all of Europe doesn't have one. They don't have one. They got rid of it because everyone's looking at the research now, and it's like, wait a second, maybe red meat, maybe milk, maybe dairy wasn't the problem. Now, there's also an environmental aspect too, which I'm not going to get into now because I don't have the time for that. But if you're just looking at it from a diet basis, eating whole foods, I don't even care what it is, rice, beans, whatever, meat, but you look at the back of the food you buy, the snacks you buy, it's got like all these different guar gums and lectins and all this other stuff that's not natural. It's not in food. It's not good for you. And to touch on this, the fact that the American Academy of Pediatrics has said that you should put children on lifelong diabetes drugs, it just proves the point I was telling you earlier about pharmaceutical companies and the research. Like, who's going to believe that? They're telling you it's genetic. They're telling you obesity is genetic. When you have multiple countries around the world as examples, as well as the United States, which had a 5% obesity rate in 1960 and now is above 50%, and they're trying to tell you it's genetic, put them on lifelong obesity drugs. Wahala, Dave. Seriously.
Man, thank you for holding people accountable because I was going to ask you, it's genetics and excuse, but I think you just
In
answered
fact,
it right there.
I want to say this: the founder of the Human Genome Project, Francis Collins, who heads the NIH. I have my own personal problems with him, but still, the Human Genome Project, the first guy who got the 99%. He himself in 2007, this is the same guy that's seen every gene, knows the coding, knows the mapping. He himself in 2007 said blaming obesity on genetics is impossible. There are too many genes involved in that. It's too complex. It does not make sense. He said that himself. Right? The head of the Human Genome Project. So where is the Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association? Where are these people getting the idea that it's genetic? Like, why are you telling kids to give up and go on medication? Why are we not holding big food accountable? Like the big food companies, well, what are you doing to us? Why? I don't know. It's such a mess. America is such a mess from healthcare to food standpoints. I love this country, but it's like two of the most important things. And no one's seen with preventative medicine, we'd also save so much money and we'd save so much lives. And just, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, USDA, FDA, they all have their part to play. Manny, we have a few more minutes here, and I just want to leave off on this note. Where do we go from here? Is it, is it a keto diet that we need to start promoting more, or are there other lifestyle changes that you think, as a physician, you would promote in your practice, or it just needs to be more systemic here in the U.S.?
Okay. Again, you're asking great questions, but that's probably because of your physician mind. So first and foremost, when it comes to lifestyle, I don't want to state anyone should have any one diet. I do believe this move towards like an all vegan kind of diet is not the best idea. Research is still out, but like I just said, whoever's paying for the research is going to get whatever they want, pretty much. But I feel like people need to focus on eating whole foods. When you read an ingredient box, you got to look and say, how much added sugars are into this? Like are they adding maltose, dextrose? Are they adding guar gum, soy lectins, unnecessary soybean oils, or is the ingredients list very simple? Maybe five things that you can understand. And that's the first thing is we have to hold big food accountable. But as a physician, I would tell people just focus on whole foods. Telling people the diet is too hard. They don't know what to diet. Tell people just eat whole foods. I don't care what you eat. Just make sure it's not like packaged foods with, and you can eat healthy for cheap. You can eat healthy for cheap. Go to any grocery store and you can eat healthy. Even if it's not the best thing, it's still better than buying the Mary Calendar frozen dinners. Don't do that. And that's one thing. But the biggest thing is actually something that as physicians, we need to lobby this. That's why I'm hopeful. When the research for the heart diet hypothesis that saturated fat was bad was coming out, the new generation of researchers that weren't as aligned to old money and corporate money in the 90s and early 2000s went, wait a second, let's look at this real quick. And they're the ones that kind of exposed, okay, maybe saturated fat and meat isn't that bad, and meat and dairy. And that's what's going to be us. I'm hopeful because we can challenge those narratives, and we can say, granted, pharmaceuticals and research are moving very quickly to counter that, but still, like, we need to challenge those narratives, and we need to actually lobby our politicians and our government to be like, hey, listen, like actually put out guidelines and measurements on real science. A lot of the science they put out, they don't really validate. It's crazy. You need to read it. I'll text you the book I read later. They don't validate it. It's insane. We need to actually hold them accountable. Make researchers and pharmaceuticals put out all the information associated with the research study. Just don't hand the peer review sheet. Let me see the electronic patient data. Let me see the clinical case studies. Let me see all the raw data, and let's have everyone privy to every single research institution's data. And then let's actually collaborate. And then the biggest thing. This is the biggest thing. It's not even physician based. It's public infrastructure. Public infrastructure is the single most important thing, which is why I'm mad that we spent $10 million in India and Africa on polio vaccines when we should have been spending that money on clean water, on building bridges, on building suitable roads, on education. Because no matter what book I've read, whether they're liberals, whether they're conservatives, whether they're socialists, whatever, they all agree on the same thing, essentially. The improvement in quality of life in first world countries, at most, it ranges from 3.5% to 20% being reliant on medicine. That's very key. No matter who I've read, whether it's socialist, Democrat, conservative, they admit no more than 20% of our life expectancy increase since 1900 or 1850 if you're in England has been because of medicine. It's been because of better space in streets, sanitation, plumbing, indoor resources, better housing, better preparedness for hurricanes and severe inclement weather, better food availability. That is the most important thing. And so we need to actually invest in public infrastructure, not like the infrastructure bill we just passed, which is only like $300 million worth of actual infrastructure. And it is like more focused on social infrastructure. No, I mean like fix roads, make sure people have clean water, make sure people have stable houses, make sure people have sanitation and space. And so that's actually the biggest thing. It's going to be a combination of getting our governments to actually okay it for people to have availability to all the research. Doctors and physicians promoting whole foods. Don't strap people to some diet that restricts their calories. Let them eat, but make sure it's whole foods. That's it. Clean. Keep it simple for them. Public infrastructure investment. And do this. I want you to do this. I want everyone watching this to do this if they get the chance. The United States has been keeping epidemiological data since 1900. When it came to vaccinations, even, like most diseases were vaccinated against, from polio to measles to mumps to whatever. By the time the vaccines came out, the death rate was already like near 0%. I'm not saying they didn't help or they did help. It's just that public infrastructure played a much greater role. And no matter what book I've read, I was reading a book from someone that worked, that was working for the Washington Post and was privy to Obama. I read another book from a guy who was very privy to conservatives and all that other stuff. They all agree that even before the vaccines, we were doing a good job in reducing childhood deaths, because we made things cleaner and more efficient. So that's my biggest takeaway from what we can do as people to try and help our society. Also, make sure people know play is important. Exercise is important. Don't stop play. Always encourage play. Stay healthy. Exercise.
Well, there you go, guys. Play is important. I remember those Play 60 commercials growing up all the time that would come on TV. And it seems like essentially less is more. Having less ingredients in those foods that you buy, eating those whole foods, that's gonna increase our overall health. And also, man, this is just credit to your knowledge, Manny. It seems like for less money, you got just as much, if not more, of a public health education, which is great to see. You explained everything in depth, and I think you brought a lot of value in terms of sports and healthcare in general, and what the future can hold for us. Now, about to wrap things up here, but I want to give you the chance. Share any last few words you have.
No, I just want to say first and foremost, congratulations, Kojo, on what you're doing. This is a pretty big endeavor for yourself, starting up your own podcast. It's an amazing thing. I don't think I would have had the impetus to do it. So congratulations to you on that. I also want to congratulate you for, making it into medical school, and kind of, I know how hard you've been working, definitely harder than me. So for you to actually finally get there and you have your options in front of you and your choices, it's great to see. And I know, because you're doing things like this and because of how you like to facilitate these conversations, you're someone that I can trust in the future is actually going to lead people on the right path. So and I just want to thank you for having me on again. We talk all the time, so we can always chop it up and talk later again. But just congratulations on everything you're doing. It's great.
Bro, those words are too kind for me, man. I really appreciate that. Those words mean a lot. And I know you're gonna be up there pretty soon, sitting in a white coat. But you're more than just a future physician. As hopefully this podcast has shown, you're a great intellect. You have a mind, and you have a lot of good, positive ideas to share with the world. So I see you doing big things too.
Thank you, man. I love it. We always reciprocate. We always bounce off of each other, so it's great. And I just want to be there with you, making the change. So.
Hey, appreciate it. Looking forward to the future with you, bro. This is Kojo Minta, and this is
Emmanuel Okwudi, and this is the Friend Zone.
And this is, yes, you got
it. Man, appreciate it.
Hello there. Well, I'm glad you made it this far. If you could, please leave a like, comment what you thought about this video, and share. It goes a long way. And if you'd like to remain in the friend zone, check out these videos. Peace.